course, David Gordo Strickland joining us on the line right now. This is an honor, folks.
Oh, yeah.
And I've said this before. It is very rare in the 15-plus years that I've been doing interviews in the wrestling business and part of the wrestling media. It's very rare that I've actually sat and marked out when someone answered the phone. It is a rare occasion. I did it when Hulk Hogan picked up the phone.
Yeah, meanwhile, I mark out regs.
I did it when Haku picked up the phone.
Yeah.
And I'm going to do it tonight because on the phone is truly the living legend. Over 11 years as the WWWF heavyweight champion. He is the greatest of all time. You heard me, Vince. Put him in the Hall of Fame. Forget it. He ain't going. He doesn't want to be part of it. Let's hear it for the greatest, ladies and gentlemen. Bruno Sammartino. How are you, sir?
My goodness, so I thank you so very, very much. That's quite an introduction. Thank you, sir.
You deserve that and more, man.
The pleasure is all ours.
Yeah.
And, you know, I got to tell you, this is one of those situations where I'm probably going to stumble over my words more so than usual. I promise this isn't my first time, but I'm just really excited about this because Mr. Sammartino, I grew up a massive fan of yours, and one of the things that I'll never forget is being a kid, born in the mid 70s, and in the early 80s. I'll never forget when my cousin would bring me videotapes of old wrestling matches and whatnot, and I was just hooked on this stud from Italy, this guy that would just go in there and beat people up. And my God, it was just such a thrill for me to really discover this sport through you. And to me, when I watched you perform, it was sport. And there was no question mark on entertainment or anything. Not to say you weren't entertaining, but I took everything as a shoot. Everything was believable. Everything was legitimate. And this is truly an honor for me, and I know for all of us here. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you. But how far back are you going that you saw me? Because I'm sure you're pretty young. I mean,
well, like I said, I was a young man growing up in the '80s.
But the '80s, I was done. I retired.
I know, and by that time I was like hearing stories, or there was video, videotapes or what have you, and all that sort of thing. And even to this day, we talked about it previously in our segment with Tyson Dukes,
right?
And he talked about how there's tons of video of Bruno Sammartino on YouTube and that sort of thing, and kids are still discovering your work even today, and it's unbelievable to us. I gotta ask you, right off the top, 7.5 years in your first run as WWE champion. That's a record that'll never, ever, ever be broken.
Of course.
And, is it even possible for a man in today's market to go half that time with the way that everyone is so overexposed with television and everything else, Bruno?
I don't know. I really doubt it because today it's no longer of the arena. Today it's television, merchandising, pay-per-view once a month or 6 months, whatever they have it, because I don't watch it. In my day and before me,
you have to get somebody ready. And he stalled me for about a year or so, so it was getting to be 7.5 years, almost, months short of 8 years, and I finally put my foot down. I says, I can't go on. I need to rest my body. And my point is that I was the one who wanted to leave the title, which I don't think too many people ever did that before. And I never wanted it back because in between, after I took time off and I got myself healed and I was training without pain, so to speak, I started accepting shots like for Sam Mushnick in St. Louis. I'd go to Paul Bosch in Houston, Texas. I went to Amarillo. I would go to California for both promotions, Shars and La Belle in Los Angeles. And if I went to Japan, I'd go for 2 weeks and then I would take off a week. all these other shots I just mentioned, I would take 2 shots and then be home for 4 or 5 days. So I'm loving the business because I'm not, I'm resting my body. I'm not beating it up like I had been all those years, and I love the business again. But then Vince McMahon came calling. He said, "We got to have you back," and I said, "No." I said, "I'm quite happy with the way things are going, picking my shots, being off, spending time at home." And he kept calling me. Finally, he and Junior, his son, they met me at the airport, and he said, "Look," he says, "you're averaging about twice a week." He says, "I'll tell you what we do. If you come back," he says, we'll work you just the main shows, just the big clubs, and that'll average out to maybe twice a week." And I for 1 year till we really can find somebody who can keep carrying the ball, you know. And finally I thought, well, if twice a week is okay. So it's supposed to be for 1 year. So I took the belt from Stan Stasiak. I came in 1 year. 1 year went to 2, 2 went to 3, and then on the 4th year is when I broke my neck in 1976.
Oh, wow.
And that's when I finally said, "Listen, you better get somebody else." I says, I'm out of here. I don't want this responsibility anymore. My point is that on both occasions that I had the title, which came closer to 12 years than 11, actually, on both cases, it was me who wanted out, not the promoters wanting me out.
Wow. It's unheard of. It's unprecedented when you say things like that. And I remember you talked about, when you finally decided to drop the title the first time. And many years ago, I had the opportunity to interview Ivan Koloff, and he talked about how that night he was afraid for his life. He won the title, and he thought that people at Madison Square Gardens were going to kill him.
Yep. Wow.
Yeah, but it turned out to be quite the opposite. I, too, was shocked that night because when Koloff came off of the top rope with a knee drop on my neck and upper chest, he came down pretty darn hard. I mean, really came down because, he was a 300-pound. At the time, I was like 270. And everything was so quiet that I thought that something happened to me, and I got hurt in my earring or whatever. But then when Arnold Skoland came in and he said to me, "Are you all right?" I heard him very clear. And I thought, what's going on? And so he helped me up, And the place, you could have dropped a pin. It was so quiet in Madison Square Garden. People were shocked. They absolutely didn't believe it that I lost the belt. And it was very touching to me because as I was making my way back to the dressing room, people, honestly, I'm not exaggerating, some people were actually crying, saying, "Bruno, we still love you, and you're the greatest. You'll always be our champion." And then when I went to the dressing room, I felt absolutely awful. I felt so hurt. I felt like I hurt these people so bad that I felt guilty. I felt terrible. I sat in that dressing room for about an hour before I even showered and make my way out of there. I just never expected that kind of reaction. I don't know if Ivan or anybody else told you that, but that's exactly what happened.
A story that I've always wanted to ask about, and unfortunately I've never had the opportunity to ask the principal people involved, so I'm going to ask you now. The night that you won your first WWWF title from Nature Boy Buddy Rogers, tell me about that night, because from what I understand, Buddy Rogers didn't know he was dropping the title that night until you told him in the ring. Tell me about that and how that all unfolded.
When I was still in Canada and I was doing well for Frank Tunney, whom I had the utmost respect for, I was doing very well there, and things had gone pretty bad in New York. Rogers had shotgunned the whole territory, and things were really, really bad. Now, McMahon and I at this time were not friends. We're enemies because they had blackballed me all over the country. They put me through some pretty tough times. But anyway, now all of a sudden I came home on a Sunday from Toronto, and every other Sunday I used to come home, and my wife told me this fellow named Ace Freeman called, who was representing McMahon in the Pittsburgh area where they had an office here, where they promoted the tri-state area. Anyway, I called him back after my wife told me he had called, and he said, "Bruno, Vince McMahon wants to talk to you. You've got to call him." And I said, "Well, if he wants to talk to me, why don't he call me?" I said, no, I'm not going to call him. So the following day, I went back to Canada, and 2 weeks later, I come home. There was another message. My wife says, Ace Freeman says, it's very important you call him. So I called him again. And he said to me, what's wrong with you? I said, didn't you hear me last time? Vince wants to talk to you. I said, well, why doesn't he call me?
Yeah.
Gangster.
Yeah.
I said, you know, what is this? I said, no, I'm not going to call him. As you tell him, if he wants to talk to me, to call me. I tell him when I'd be home. I'm home every other week. And he thought I was crazy, you know, but I wasn't, you know, we weren't speaking terms or anything at this time. We were not friendly. And so I came back, and surely he called. And he started the conversation by saying, now, Bruno, he says, this is this. He says, now, listen, this before I hardly even said hello. He said, listen, I don't want to talk about the past. We're strictly talking about the future here. He says, and you can have a future here in New York. And I said, well, Vince, I started in New York, and things, I don't have very pleasant memories. He says, no, he says, I told you, forget the past. We're talking about the future, he kept saying. And he says, you got to come back to New York. It'll be a different ballgame. And I said, well, I'm very happy working for Frank Tunney in Canada. And I said, and I'm not interested in coming back to New York. And more or less, I cut the conversation short and I hung up. 2 weeks later, he called again, and he said, now listen, Bruno, listen to me. He says, you got to come back. He says, I'm going to do for you what I have never done for anybody. He says, I'm going to give you on a minimum guarantee. Minimum. He says, but you can do better. He said, $500 a week. Now, keep in mind, guys, when we're talking 500, I know today doesn't sound like much, but we're going back now to 1963,
Of
okay?
course.
And
People
minimum,
making
that was the
$1 an
minimum guarantee that they offered me, but he says, I could do better. And I said, no. I said, that doesn't do it for me. I said, I'm happy where I'm at. Everything is going really well for me here, and that's it. So I more or less ended that conversation. He called me back 2 weeks later, and he said to me, okay, I'll tell you what, I'll give you $750 a week guaranteed, and you can do better. I said, no, Vince, and he very frustrated. He said, well, what do you want? What does it take? I says, Buddy Rogers. I said, oh, get me Buddy Rogers. He says, well, you know, you and Buddy never liked each other. You hate each other. He says, he ain't gonna go along with this, with you in the garden. I says, well, then that's your problem. I said, well, that's the only way. And that was the end of that. And then a little time went by, and he contacted me, and they came up with a plan, which, anyway, okay, they came up with a plan that we agreed upon, very secretive. Nobody was supposed to know anything, but they led Rogers to believe that more or less I had been bought, you know, that I was going to come in the garden and do a job for him. Wow. But in the garden, there was no double cross, because when the referee gave us the instructions, I told him that forget what you had been told. I told him straight out, so there was no double crossing of any kind. And the only thing I will tell you is that the match, as you probably remember or heard, only lasted 48 seconds.
That's right.
And what happened was that I didn't trust Rogers at all. I never trusted him. So when we got the instructions, he looked very puzzled and confused and didn't, I guess, was I serious, or was this, what was going on? You know, at least that's what I read in his face. I backed up to my corner. I wouldn't turn my back to him. I backed up to my corner, and frankly, when the bell rang and he was in his corner, he never came out. I rushed him over. I yanked him to the center of the ring, and I scooped him up. I was very strong in those days. I scooped him up, and I gave him a tremendous body slam. I picked him up. I threw him in my back from my back break, and I said, buddy, give it up right now. Wow. And I never heard him say he quit or anything like that, but the referee signaled me to put him down. Put him down, he said. I put him down, and he raised my hand, and I was like,
Wow.
But there was no big fight, no, you know, I don't want to tell you that it was a big battle, and then I overcame him. He really didn't do nothing.
Well, I mean, let's be serious. If things had to be done the hard way, I mean, what was Buddy Rogers going to say to a young Bruno Sammartino? Not much.
Well, that night, this was my big break. I had demanded this and that. Believe me, I could have maybe kid myself, but I was very, very ready for anything that night. I went in there, and I really felt in my heart. I was 26 years old. I was 275 pounds. Anybody who knows me would tell you I trained like a dog. I used to train 3 and 4 hours a day. I went in there in great shape. I was strong, and I went in there, and I felt like I could have whipped a lion that night. That's how confident I was. But I didn't have to because he gave no resistance at all.
I'm curious to ask you something, Bruno, because you mentioned that when you were negotiating with McMahon, it wasn't really about the weekly payoff. You wanted Buddy Rogers. And then the first thing that McMahon says to you is, well, that's not going to happen. You guys don't even like each other. Why did you want him? Did you want to get him out of the territory because you weren't a fan of his?
I wanted the belt because if I became the champion,
right, that's the money.
Then Buddy would be done. He would be out of there. And then I felt that I really believed in my heart that I could bring the territory back up. I know when I went to Toronto how dead it was, and I learned quickly in this business what was wrong, what was needed, and so forth. And I felt that in New York it was the same thing. I felt that Buddy had, we call it gunshotting the whole thing by doing all kinds of crazy angles and stuff. They work for a little while, but then they kill you. And I felt that if we went back there and with some good talent and gave people some good hard wrestling matches, I honestly believe that people would come. And it did, and that's exactly what happened. And in fact, I was extremely lucky because we stayed that way. In fact, I something else I'll brag to you about a little bit, which I was so thrilled. I always promised myself that I would not stay in the business longer than I should have. I didn't want to be in there to the point where people are saying, "Oh my God, what's wrong with that guy? Why don't he go home? He's old. He's finished." If you remember a little bit, since you say you were a fan, you remember the thing with Zbyszko. We sold out everything in sight. I mean, we turned them away in certain cities by the thousands, and that's how I went out. That's how, from there, I opened up the Meadowland in New Jersey because they had asked me, and I waited for that. That was on October the 4th, 1981. October the 5th, I left for Tokyo because Japan had contacted me. They heard I was retiring, and they asked me if I would do a farewell little tour of Japan. So I left on the 5th of October, got there on the 6th, which was my birthday, October the 6th. I did a 10-day tour of Japan, and I come home and I was retired.
Wow.
At the top of his game, selling out hugest houses in the world.
You know why that was important to me? When I was a rookie in New York, when I first started, and I got booked with the first big name, was Gorgeous George. I couldn't believe it. I thought, oh my gosh, Gorgeous George, me? I was a nobody, and this is Gorgeous George. Although Gorgeous George at this time, it was way past his big days, where he had been such a big attraction. But to me, all I could think of was Gorgeous George, my gosh. And we wrestled, I'll never forget, at the Convention Hall in Philadelphia. And while I'm going to the ring with him, George was a terrific athlete, I guess. He was a good wrestler, but he wasn't a big guy. He only weighed about 215 pounds. And here I was, about 275 at this time. And not bragging, but, because of all the training I'd done and everything, I looked like a bull. And people start making remarks like, "Hey, Bruno, don't hurt the old man." What's that old man? They'd laugh and say, "Hey, old man, why don't you go home? What are you doing in there? You're washed up." It hurt me so deeply when I heard these comments about a guy who had been such a big deal in the business. It hurt me so deeply that I was depressed for the guy. I felt so sad and bad that I swore then that if I ever became a headliner, if I ever became one of the biggies in the business, that I would never stay in it that long to have people speak of me that way.
Right.
And so I always paid attention to how I was doing by the gates and the people reaction and so forth. And I kept going, and then I felt now my age was catching up, and I said, "That's it, time to get out." And what a way to get out! Like I said, I did that thing with Zbyszko, and we did really, really big business, and that was the end of my career.
When you sold out Shea Stadium with Pedro Morales,
Yes.
was that at that time completely unprecedented to have two gigantic baby faces going head to head on a show of that magnitude?
You know, that was a great thing. You know what was terrible about that night? For 3 days and 3 nights, it wouldn't stop raining.
Yeah.
It was such terrible weather, and it was on September, I believe the 30th, if I remember right. I think it's when that match took place. Anyway, it was brutal, and they couldn't change the date or anything. That was the only date available, and we had to go through it. So Vince McMahon advertised that rain or shine, the match will go on, the match will go on. And I'm telling you, when we went in that ring, it was cold, it was windy, it was rainy, and we went an hour, 18 minutes. But I'll tell you what, and everybody who was there, I'm not talking about the audience, I'm talking about different promoters and wrestlers that came to see this thing. Everybody, we received nothing but compliments to what a great babyface match that was for 1 hour and 18 minutes. It was great. But we drew a bigger gate with me and Zbyszko, though. We had a bigger house because with Morales, we would have probably completely sold out. But like I said, the weather couldn't have been worse. When I wrestled Zbyszko, it was August the 9th, and it was a good night. And so we packed it that night, you know.
Was there at that time any sort of apprehension about putting two big baby faces in the ring against each other?
Yes, Vince McMahon never liked that. I told him, I said, you some of you promoters are so wrong. I told him, I said, he was the champion at the time, Pedro Morales.
That's right.
I said, if you put the right match in there, I said, I believe that the people will come out because they'd want to see. It's always the bad guy versus the good guy. I said, if they think of Morales as a good wrestler, if they think of me as a good wrestler, they think that maybe they're going to see one heck of a match. And then you had the Hispanic population, who of course is going to root for Morales, and you have the others, Italians and whatever, some others I'd hope would be rooting for me and want me to take the belt off of him. So all this, I thought, created great interest, and it did. And when we went in, Vince McMahon, I had to really do some talking to convince him that it would work. Finally, they took a chance, and he thought it was amazing under those conditions, the weather and all, that it did as well as it did, and that it would be received the way it did. Because I remember going to Japan, and not too long after that, and the promotion over there told me that how impressed they were with that was one of the greatest matches they'd ever seen, and they asked me if I could repeat that kind of a match with my opponent that night, with Shohei Baba, and of course it was impossible. Shohei Baba was not Pedro Morales.
Yeah. Not even close. Daniel, go ahead.
Yeah, Bruno, I've been dying to ask you, because it goes without saying that, you're one of the all-time greats, obviously a legend in this business, and we talk a lot about the WWE Hall of Fame around here, especially with WrestleMania weekend having passed about a week or so ago, and the fact that you're not in it, and also the fact that you don't want to be in it. Could you talk to us a little bit about your opinions of the WWE Hall of Fame and your place, in your opinion?
Sure. When I retired in the 1981. In 1984, when Vince McMahon Jr. contacted me because he took over, his dad was out. Now his dad, in fact, had passed away in March, and this I'm talking about September of 1984 when he contacted me about that he was taking over, and he wanted to wanted me to come back. He says, you know, who better than you? You were here for so long, and I want to keep Dad's tradition, that sort of thing. I got the impression that he wanted me back not only to do some commentating with him like I had done before while I was still wrestling, but also because he felt that, you know, I'd been there for so long that I could probably, you know, give a hand as far as talent or matchmaking or something.
Yeah.
I just assumed because of the way he spoke to me. So I went back. But when I went back, it was a very short time. I saw things that were appalling. I saw the steroid use, which was unbelievable. It looked like everybody was on it, you know, everybody. And there were other drugs involved and stuff like that. And right there, I got turned off. I got turned off big time, and I became kind of a pariah because I spoke against all that kind of stuff. And eventually, I said, I got to get out of here. I said, there's going to be scandals. There's going to be this or that, and I don't want to be in part of this. I don't want to have anything to do with this.
Right.
So when I got out, I felt a couple of people already died. This quick draw McGraw, as they called them, and I think Gino Hernandez. A couple guys had died, and they were very young, 27, 28 years old. And I thought this is going to be a lot more of that. And I became very outspoken because I wanted to bring some attention to it that I thought maybe through the either State Athletic Commission or some other group or that would do some policing it to try to stop what was going on. But they all went to deaf ears. After I tried for a pretty long time, I thought there's no sense. Nobody cares. So I got out. You know, that was it. Now, when they first started this Hall of Fame thing, naturally they were all angry at me because of speaking out as I did. I wasn't even considered. Now, don't misunderstand. That didn't do anything to me as far as making me angry, upset, or anything. Because even if they had named me on that first Hall of Fame thing, I would have absolutely refused. But that wasn't even considered because Vince McMahon was going to show me, you know, because he's the one who picks whoever's going to appear there. But what happened was he got bombarded afterward with all kinds of mail and calls. How could you call an Hall of Fame with the guy who was there for so those years, and he's not even going to be inducted? He's not even being named. You know what I mean? So it was because of all this reaction from the public that his lawyer, a couple years later, contacted me and tried to get me to go in. But I told him, and I've told everybody. Some people say, oh, he's a bitter guy. I'm not a bitter guy at all. I just don't want to be in it because I'm against everything that they did. I was totally against it all. And I would have felt like a real hypocrite if I'm so much against it and then I accept this Hall of Fame by this very organization that I feel that I have such bad feelings about for what they've done. I just didn't feel right about it and didn't want no part of it. And I still feel that way to this day. It's just the way I feel, and I can't go by whether people think I'm right or wrong. I have to live with me, and I have to do what I believe in, not what somebody else thinks.
I mean, truly, you're a man of your convictions. And over the years, there is no shortage of people that have had public and private issues with Vince Jr. But everyone else, virtually, has mended fences other than you, who's always maintained, I'm not interested. You know, is there anything that could ever sway your opinion and make you want that opportunity? And let me say this, Bruno, the only reason I ask is not because we give a crap about Vince McMahon's Hall of Fame or anything like that, but I personally, and if it's not with the WWE, then somewhere, would love the opportunity for the mainstream fans to be able to say thank you and to be able to acknowledge you and praise you today, you know, for everything that you did over the course of your career. But that being said, is there anything that would convince you to accept an invitation into Vince McMahon's Hall of Fame?
Okay. First of all, you have to realize something, okay? Let me give you an example. When I go, I'm retire now. Toronto's going to be my last show because I'm not traveling anymore to make these appearances, which I've been doing now for a number of years. I couldn't miss Toronto because my memories of Toronto are so fond of and so appreciative of my break that I got in Toronto that I have to do that. But every place I've gone where people come to me, I get two reactions. One is, Bruno, I appreciate and respect that how you stand by your beliefs and blah, blah, blah. And then I have those who say, you know, Bruno, you should accept that Hall of Fame for the fans, if for no other reason. And I tell them when they say that, I say, okay, are you a married guy? Do you have children? Or, you know, some say yes, some say no. I said, well, if you have children or your parents or your wife, I said, your girlfriend, and you want to go to this WWE Hall of Fame, I asked him, where would you take him?
There's no building. Right, I got you.
And then they look at me like, oh, well, they don't understand. That's another terrible thing. This is strictly another marketing thing for McMahon to make money. They do the videos, DVDs, whatever, and he's got so many markets around the world. They sell, they make a lot of money for it. That's not a Hall of Fame. It's not what Hall of Fame is there? And then look at what kind of an Hall of Fame is that? These people, don't misunderstand. I have great respect for them for what they accomplished in their lives and their careers. But where does Bob Uecker, where does Pete Rose, where does Refrigerator Perry, where does show hosts like Drew Carey or Bob Barker or Mike Tyson, how do these people come into a wrestling Hall of Fame?
Can't argue with that.
Yep.
It's a joke. That's what I try to tell people who think you should do it for the fans. How am I going to do it for the fans? Fans ain't going to see nothing.
Right. It's so true.
You know what? When they did the Hall of Fame ceremony this year, I'm sure that the entire McMahon family held their breath for the first 5 minutes of Mike Tyson's speech. when all he did was talk about his favorite wrestler, Bruno Sammartino, and how he went on in detail talking about how Bruno used to beat everyone's ass and how he was a huge fan. I'll bet you anything Vince McMahon was in the back. Kill his mic!
Yeah.
Kill his mic! You know, and that must have been an interesting feeling.
Yeah.
It begs the question, though. A man like Mike Tyson says it. Bruno Sammartino, my favorite wrestler of all time. 13 or 14 years ago, I had the great honor to interview Stu Hart. And Stu Hart says to me, the best wrestler he ever saw, Bruno Sammartino.
Oh, wow.
I want to know, who's Bruno Sammartino's favorite wrestler?
Who's Bruno Sammartino?
Who's?
I don't know. I'm not sure I understand what you just said.
What I said was, who is Bruno Sammartino's favorite wrestler?
Oh, who is my favorite wrestler?
Yes, sir.
Gosh, there's so many people that I truly respected and admired as far as their skills. I'll give you an example. Do you remember Dolly or Jonathan?
Of course, yes.
Okay, I wrestled Jonathan a lot of time. Now, a lot of people don't know him, and that makes me feel sad that they don't know him, because here's a guy who was about 6'6" or 6'7", 350 pounds, and he was so agile in that ring. He could do amazing things for a giant, and I was very much in awe of him. I was in awe of when I used to wrestle. If you ever saw in our primes, not the cage match, but the regular match that I had with Ivan Koloff when we were both young. I was 275 and he was 300. We were moving in that ring like a couple of 123-pound guys. The way we were just arm dragging and drop toe holds and back body drops, scoop slams from the ropes. I mean, action galore. And I thought, man, this guy in his prime, Koloff, he was an amazing guy. Another guy that impressed me was Monsoon, because he was 420 pounds. I went an hour 20 minutes with him in Madison Square Garden one night, and we didn't bore the people to death with the people on their toes, because he could move, and he weighed 420 pounds. So I could never name one guy. There were Sokolowski. You stay blessed because I wrestled him so many times, and I had so many hour matches with him and longer. And he amazed me because the first, the way he was the first 5 minutes of the match would be the way he was on the 60th minute. His conditioning was so phenomenal. In different ways, there were a bunch of guys that I truly, truly admired and respected, and I couldn't be fair. It wouldn't be fair to just name me one person. I really couldn't.
Well, you know what? That's the answer, a class act like you would
No
give.
doubt.
And it's nice just to hear a little bit. You know, when you say Don Leo Jonathan, I get a big warm smile in my heart. One of my all-time favorites. When people say to me, "Who are your all-time favorites?" You know, that's one of the names I always say. And if someone says who, then I say you're not a wrestling fan.
Yeah, because anybody who saw Jonathan in his day, how could you not respect or appreciate what this guy was all about? He was an amazing, amazing guy.
Bruno Sammartino, you know, this weekend, you're going to be a part of Wrestle Reunion in Toronto. I did not know what you mentioned a minute ago, that this is going to be your last trip. Wow. And after that, it's official retirement. That being said, sir, I am truly honored to say that the O Show, all of us here, we're going to be at Wrestle Reunion. We're going to have a booth set up. We'll have a booth set up at the convention. I know a bunch of the legends are going to be stopping by and sitting down with us for a face-to-face chat. And, you know, I hope I have the opportunity to see you and meet with you and shake your hand and thank you for this opportunity face-to-face. And it is truly an honor to have you give us a little bit of your time and insight of your mind. And it is truly been a special occasion for all of us. And thank you so much.
Yes.